He didn't plan to stay. Daniel told himself he was only there to finish the paperwork, to shut down his computer, to go home before Lily fell asleep with the hallway light still on. But the building was quiet in that particular way that made every small sound feel exposed. The hum of the vents, the soft click of the elevator somewhere far off. Then Sofia's office door opened. Not wide, just enough. She stepped out like she already knew he was still there. Daniel didn't move. His hand was still resting on the back of his chair, halfway between standing up and sitting back down. His throat felt dry, like he'd been holding his breath for too long. Sofia looked tired. Not messy tired, controlled tired. The kind that comes from carrying too much without letting anyone see it. She glanced at the clock on the wall, then at him. "You're still here," she said. It wasn't an accusation, but it wasn't nothing either. Daniel's mouth opened, but the words didn't come out right away. His chest felt tight, and he hated that it did. He hated that she could do that without even trying. Outside the windows, the city was already dark. The glass reflected both of them like they were standing in a place that didn't belong to anyone. And for a moment, Daniel understood something he wasn't ready to understand. He wasn't staying because of work. He was staying because leaving meant going back to pretending he didn't feel anything at all. The ocean race wasn't Daniel's idea. He tried to get out of it 3 different ways. First by saying he couldn't find childcare. Then by saying he couldn't swim well enough. Then, finally, by just telling Sofia he didn't think it was a good use of time. She didn't argue. She just looked at him across her desk with that quiet patience that always made him feel like he was the one being unreasonable. "It's one Saturday," she said. "You've worked 6 weeks straight." Daniel almost laughed, like she hadn't been watching him work himself into the ground for the last year, like she hadn't been the one assigning half of it. But she didn't say it in a way that sounded cruel. She said it like she meant it, like she wanted him to come. He hated that it mattered. He went, anyway. The morning of the race was cold enough that his fingers went stiff before he even got out of the car. The harbor smelled like wet rope and fuel and seaweed that had been baking in the sun the day before. People were already moving around the docks, laughing too loudly, carrying bags with unnecessary energy. The kind of energy people got when they wanted to prove they had a life outside of work. Daniel stood there for a moment with his hands in his jacket pockets, watching. He saw coworkers he barely spoke to during the week suddenly acting like old friends. He saw their spouses and their kids. He saw someone handing out coffee in paper cups. He felt out of place immediately. Not because he didn't belong, because he didn't want to belong. He checked his phone. Lily had sent him a voice note an hour earlier. "Dad, don't forget my purple lunchbox, and tell Grandma I want pancakes." He played it twice without meaning to. His mother had insisted on keeping Lily overnight, so he could go do something normal for once. She'd said it with a pointed look, like his life had become a bad habit. Daniel hadn't argued. It was easier to let her win than to explain that normal didn't feel like something he could afford anymore. He tucked his phone back into his pocket and walked toward the registration table. That's when he saw Sofia. She was standing near the water, alone, looking at the boats like she was counting something. Her hair was tied back in a low ponytail. No makeup that he could see. A windbreaker zipped halfway up. Her sleeves were pushed to her elbows. She looked different outside the office. Not softer. Just less guarded. Daniel didn't approach right away. He watched her for a second too long. She had a coffee cup in one hand. The other was wrapped around her elbow like she was keeping herself warm. Her shoulders were tense, but her face was calm, like she was already bracing for something. When she turned and saw him, her expression changed. Not much. Just enough. She walked toward him with steady steps, and Daniel felt his stomach tighten in a way that annoyed him. "You came," she said. "I said I would. I know. I'm just—" She stopped. The wind lifted a few strands of her hair loose from the tie. She pushed them back behind her ear. "I'm glad." Daniel nodded once. He didn't know what to do with that. They stood there for a second, with the water behind her and the dock noise around them. People calling out names, laughing, bumping shoulders. Sofia looked at him like she wanted to say something else but didn't. Finally she tilted her head slightly. "How's Lily?" The question hit him in the chest. Not because it was deep, because it was real. Because she remembered without making it a performance. "She's fine," he said. "She's with my mom." Sofia nodded slowly, like she was imagining it. "Does she like your mom?" Daniel let out a short breath through his nose. "She loves her. My mom spoils her. It's their whole relationship." Sofia smiled, small and quiet. It made her look younger. Or maybe it just made her look like she wasn't carrying her job on her back. "She seems like a good kid," Sofia said. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't know why compliments about Lily always made him defensive, like someone was praising something he didn't deserve. "She is," he said. "She's everything." Sofia didn't respond right away. She just looked at him, and Daniel had the uncomfortable feeling that she understood more than he wanted her to. A man in a bright blue jacket walked up behind them and started calling names, reading from a clipboard. People began moving toward their assigned boats. Sofia checked her wristband. "We're on the same team," she said. Daniel blinked. "We are?" She held up her band so he could see the number. It matched his. "I didn't pick it," she added quickly. "It's random." Daniel stared at the band like it was a joke someone had planned at his expense. He'd been trying to keep distance from her for months. Not because she'd done anything wrong, because she was his supervisor. Because he had enough complications already. Because the last thing he needed was to feel something he couldn't act on. And now, they were on the same boat. Of course they were. They walked down the dock together. The boat they were assigned to wasn't large. It was a racing sailboat, narrow and sleek, with ropes coiled in tight loops and a mast that looked too tall for something that light. There were two other co-workers already there. Mark from finance, loud and sweaty even in the cold, and Jenna from marketing, who looked like she belonged on a yacht, not a race boat. Mark grinned when he saw Daniel. "Brooks, didn't think you'd show." Daniel didn't answer. Sofia greeted them with polite professionalism, the same way she greeted clients. Calm voice, steady eye contact. She stepped onto the boat like she'd done it before. Daniel followed, careful with his footing. The dock rocked slightly beneath him, and for a second he thought about how stupid this whole thing was. How he could have stayed home. He could have taken Lily to the park. He could have been doing something that didn't involve cold wind and co-workers pretending to be friends. But he was here. The captain, a woman with sun-weathered skin and a voice that didn't soften, gave them quick instructions. Where to sit, how to move when she said move, what not to touch unless told. Daniel listened, but his attention kept sliding sideways to Sofia. She was paying attention. Fully. Not distracted, not half engaged. Her hands rested on her knees. Her eyes were focused. It reminded him of the way she listened in meetings. Like she didn't miss anything. The boat pulled away from the dock. The harbor opened up ahead of them, gray water stretching toward the horizon. The wind hit harder once they cleared the protection of the buildings. It smelled sharper out there, cleaner. Like the ocean didn't care about their little corporate event. Daniel braced himself as the boat tilted slightly. Jenna laughed, high and nervous. Mark started talking too much, trying to fill the space. Daniel kept quiet. Sofia sat across from him, holding onto a rope with one hand as the captain adjusted the sail. Her cheeks were already pink from the cold. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she watched the sail catch wind. She looked alive out there. Daniel didn't like noticing that. The race began with a horn blast that echoed over the water. Other boats surged forward around them. Bright sails cut across the gray sky. People shouted directions. The captain barked orders. And suddenly Daniel was moving without thinking, pulling a rope when told, shifting his weight when the boat leaned. The first few minutes were chaos. Then it became rhythm. Daniel could feel the strain in his arms, the cold biting through his jacket, the slap of water against the hull. It demanded his attention in a way that work never did. It was physical, immediate. If he made a mistake, it wouldn't show up as an email later. It would happen right now. At one point, the boat dipped hard, and Daniel's foot slipped. He caught himself, but not fast enough. His shoulder bumped Sofia's knee. It wasn't a dramatic collision, just contact, but it sent something through him anyway. a quick shock that didn't match the moment. He straightened immediately. "Sorry," he muttered. Sofia shook her head. "It's fine." Her voice was close enough that he could hear it clearly over the wind. He didn't look at her again for several minutes. They rounded the first buoy, the boat leaning as the captain shouted. Daniel's hands burned from gripping the rope. Mark was laughing like he was having the time of his life. Jenna was trying to look composed but kept flinching every time the boat shifted. Sofia didn't flinch. Daniel noticed that too. They hit a rough patch of water. The boat bounced hard, and Jenna yelped. Mark stumbled and grabbed the railing. Sofia reached out without thinking and caught Mark's arm, steadying him. Daniel watched her hand grip his sleeve. It was nothing, just reflex. But Daniel felt his throat tighten. He turned away, angry at himself. Angry at the stupid jealousy that had no right to exist. Angry at the fact that he could still feel jealousy at all, after everything he'd already lost. The wind picked up. The captain yelled for them to shift weight. Daniel moved quickly, crossing the narrow deck. For a second, Sofia was directly in his path. They had to squeeze past each other. There wasn't space. Her shoulder brushed his chest as she turned sideways. Daniel froze, just for half a second, and Sofia's eyes flicked up to his. They held for a moment. Not long, but it felt like it lingered in his body longer than it should have. Then she moved past him, and the boat surged forward again. Daniel's pulse didn't settle. He kept his face blank, focused on the water, on the sail, on anything except the fact that Sofia Martinez had just looked at him like she knew exactly what was happening inside him, like she could hear it. The race continued. The sky stayed gray. The cold stayed sharp. Their boat moved fast, cutting through the water with a kind of violent grace, and Daniel, against his will, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Not peace. Just a strange sensation of being awake. By the time they reached the second marker, Daniel's hands were raw. The rope had left a thin burn across his palm, a line that stung every time he tightened his grip. He could feel it under the cold, under the adrenaline, like his body was quietly keeping score. Mark kept talking, voice too loud, trying to sound like he belonged out there. Jenna had gone pale and quiet, her eyes fixed on the horizon like she was trying not to get sick. Sofia stayed steady. Daniel didn't know why that bothered him. He told himself it didn't. He told himself he didn't care how she handled the water or the wind or pressure. But he kept noticing anyway. The way she moved when the captain called out instructions. The way she shifted her weight without hesitation. Like she trusted herself. It was the kind of confidence Daniel used to have before his life became smaller. Before every decision had to be safe. The boat lurched again, hard enough that Daniel's knee hit the side rail. Pain shot up his leg, quick and sharp. He swallowed the sound that wanted to come out. Sofia glanced at him. "Okay?" she asked. Daniel nodded once. He didn't like being checked on. Not by her. Not when her voice made it feel like something more than a passing question. The captain yelled again, and they moved. Daniel crossed the deck, crouched low, and pulled the line the way he'd been told. His arms shook with effort. He caught Sofia watching him for a second. Not in a casual way, like she was reading him. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. He hated being readable. The wind shifted, and the sail snapped. The sound was loud enough to make Jenna flinch. Mark laughed like it was funny. Daniel's stomach rolled slightly, but he steadied himself. The boat cut left, then right, chasing the best angle. Time didn't move normally out there. It didn't feel like a workday where hours dragged. It felt like a stretch of minutes that kept folding into each other. Noise, motion, salt in the air. And in the middle of it, Sofia. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't trying to perform. She wasn't looking at her phone. Wasn't looking for someone to impress. She was just there, present. Daniel didn't know when he started trusting her, but he could feel it. He could feel himself taking cues from her calm, like her steadiness was contagious. That realization unsettled him. Trust was dangerous. Trust was what got you hurt. Trust was what made you careless. He'd learned that the hard way. The captain shouted something, and Sofia moved toward the front of the boat to help adjust a line. Daniel followed without being told, because it made sense. Because she didn't hesitate, and neither did he. They worked side by side for a moment, both pulling, both leaning their weight into it. Daniel could smell her shampoo under the salt air. Something clean, almost citrus. It hit him unexpectedly. For a second he wasn't on a boat. He was in the office hallway near the copier, catching that same scent when she walked past him. The memory made his chest tighten. He pulled harder, finished the adjustment, then stepped back quickly, like the closeness had burned him. Sofia looked at him. "You're good at this," she said. Daniel gave a short, humorless exhale. "It's ropes, not brain surgery." "That's not what I meant." Her tone was quiet. Daniel looked away. He watched the water instead, watched it churn white near the hole. The boat surged forward, and the captain called out that they were gaining on the team ahead. Mark started shouting encouragement like they were in a war movie. Daniel didn't care about winning. He didn't even care about finishing. He cared about the way Sofia's voice had sounded just now, the way she'd said it like she meant something personal, like she'd been watching him longer than he realized. The last stretch of the race came faster than he expected. The boats converged, all of them angling toward the finish line, sails full, bodies moving in practice chaos. Their boat tilted hard, and Daniel's muscles screamed with the strain of holding position. The captain barked orders. Sofia's face was flushed now, her eyes sharp. She looked almost fierce, not angry, just focused in a way Daniel rarely saw in the office, where she had to keep herself measured. Out here, she didn't have to pretend. Daniel wondered if that was why she'd wanted to come, or maybe she hadn't wanted to come at all. Maybe she'd been dragged here the same way he had, by obligation and expectations. But she didn't look dragged. She looked like she'd been waiting for something like this. They crossed the finish line with a horn blast, and Mark threw his arms up like they'd won the Olympics. Jenna let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Daniel sat back, breathing hard. His arms felt heavy, his shoulders burning. He wiped his palm on his jeans and felt the sting of the rope burn again. Sofia leaned forward, hands on her knees, catching her breath. Her hair had loosened from the ponytail, strands sticking to her cheek. Daniel stared too long. He looked away before she could notice, but the damage was done. The thought was already in him. He wanted her. Not in a casual way. Not in a passing fantasy. In a way that made him feel stupid. In a way that made him feel like he was standing too close to the edge of something he couldn't afford. They headed back toward the docks. The adrenaline faded slowly, leaving behind the cold. Daniel's sweat cooled under his jacket. His fingers went numb again. When the boat finally bumped against the dock and the captain helped them climb off, Daniel stepped onto solid ground and felt the strange sway of the ocean still inside his legs. Mark clapped him on the shoulder. "Brooks, you were a beast," Mark said, grinning. "Didn't know you had it in you." Daniel gave a small nod. Nothing else. Jenna hurried off toward the bathrooms, hand over her mouth. Mark wandered after her, still laughing. Sofia stayed. Daniel stayed too, though he told himself he was only waiting for the dock to clear, only letting the crowd move ahead. But the truth was obvious. They stood at the edge of the dock while people drifted away, leaving behind scattered voices and the sound of ropes knocking against metal poles. The harbor wind cut through Daniel's damp shirt. He shivered once. Involuntary. Sofia noticed. "You're freezing," she said. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Her voice wasn't sharp. "Just matter of fact." Daniel didn't respond. He watched the water instead. Watched the way it slapped against the dock pilings. Sofia stepped closer. Enough that her shoulder was almost level with his. Daniel could feel her presence without looking at her. Like heat. Like gravity. "You don't ever let yourself enjoy anything," she said. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not true." Sofia's breath came out slowly. She didn't look at him at first. She stared at the water too, like she was talking to it. "It is true," she said. "You show up. You do your job. You do it better than anyone. You leave. You don't talk about yourself. You don't ask for help. You don't let anyone close." Daniel's throat tightened. He should have walked away. He should have said something neutral, something professional, something that reminded her of the line they weren't supposed to cross. but the cold had worn him down. The ocean had stripped something off him, and the way she said it, quiet, not accusing, made it feel like she wasn't trying to corner him. She was just saying what she saw. Daniel swallowed. "You don't know anything about my life," he said. Sofia finally turned her head. Her eyes met his. "I know you're tired," she said. "I know you're raising your daughter alone. I know you're carrying things you don't talk about. And I know you act like none of it matters." Daniel's hands curled slightly, fingers flexing against the sting of the rope burn. He felt exposed, not in a dramatic way, in a simple, uncomfortable way. Like someone had opened a drawer he kept locked. He forced his voice steady. "It's not your concern." Sofia didn't flinch. "No," she said. "It's not." She paused. Her gaze dropped briefly to his hand. "You're bleeding," she said. Daniel looked down. The rope burn had split slightly, a thin line of blood smeared across his palm. He hadn't noticed. He shrugged like it didn't matter. "It's nothing." Sofia reached into her windbreaker pocket and pulled out a small packet, a single-use antiseptic wipe. She held it out. "Take it." Daniel hesitated. The moment stretched. He didn't want to accept it, not because it was a big deal, because it felt intimate, because it was the kind of small care that made a person's walls look ridiculous. Sofia kept her hand out, waiting. Daniel took the wipe. Their fingers touched for half a second. There was barely anything, but Daniel felt it anyway. A quick, sharp awareness that made his pulse jump. He tore open the packet and cleaned his palm. It stung, and he winced before he could stop himself. Sofia watched, expression unreadable. "You're stubborn," she said. Daniel let out a short laugh, but it wasn't amused. "I don't have time to be anything else." Sofia nodded like she understood. That was the worst part. She didn't argue. She didn't try to fix him. She didn't tell him to take care of himself, like people said when they wanted to feel helpful. She just stood there beside him, silent, letting the cold fill the space between them. Daniel finished wiping his hand and folded the packet in his fingers. He should have said thank you. He should have handed it back. Instead, he kept it in his palm like he didn't know what to do with it. The dock was quieter now. Most people had moved toward the tents where food was being served. The smell of grilled meat drifted across the harbor. Sofia glanced toward the crowd. "We should go join them," she said. Daniel didn't move. He didn't know why he spoke next. He didn't know why he let the words out. Maybe because she'd already seen too much. Maybe because the ocean had pulled his guard down. Or maybe because he was tired of carrying everything alone. "I wasn't always like this," he said. The sentence surprised him as soon as it left his mouth. Sofia looked back at him, her attention sharpening. Daniel stared at the water, not at her. "I used to. I don't know," he said. His voice sounded rough. "I used to think life was going to be simple if I did everything right. Like if I worked hard enough, if I stayed decent enough, things would just stay." He stopped. His chest felt tight. Sofia didn't interrupt. Daniel kept going. Slower now. Like he was picking his way through something fragile. "Then my wife got sick," he said. The words came out flat, not because it didn't hurt, because it hurt too much to say any other way. Sofia's face softened, but she didn't pity him. She didn't make a sound. Daniel swallowed again. "She died fast," he said. "Faster than I was ready for. Faster than Lily could understand. And after that, everything became about survival. Not falling apart, not letting Lily see me break." He paused, his jaw clenching. "I don't think I ever stopped bracing for the next thing." The wind picked up, pushing cold air against his face. Daniel blinked hard. He didn't cry. He hadn't cried in front of anyone in years, but his eyes burned anyway. Sofia's voice was low when she finally spoke. "What was her name?" Daniel's throat tightened again. "Emma," he said. Sofia repeated it softly, like she was putting it somewhere safe. "Emma." Daniel nodded once. He kept staring at the water, because looking at Sofia felt like too much, like if he looked at her, he'd lose control of the careful balance he'd built. Sofia stepped a little closer. not enough to touch him. Just enough that Daniel could feel her warmth through the air. "I'm sorry," she said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't forced. It sounded like something she meant. Daniel exhaled slowly, his breath visible in the cold. He didn't know what to say. Sofia's eyes stayed on him. "Thank you for telling me," she said. Daniel let out a short breath. "I don't know why I did." Sofia didn't smile. "Maybe because you're tired," she said. "Maybe because you needed to say her name out loud." Daniel's hand clenched around the empty antiseptic wipe packet. He felt the sting in his palm again. He felt the ache in his chest that never fully went away. He didn't want comfort. He didn't want sympathy. But standing there with Sofia beside him, he felt something else. A strange relief, like he'd been holding his breath for years and had finally let a little air out. Sofia glanced toward the tents again. "Come eat," she said. "You look like you haven't eaten all day." Daniel almost said no, but the words stayed in his throat. He nodded once instead. They walked side by side toward the crowd, not touching, not speaking, but close enough that Daniel could feel the shift in something between them. And he hated himself for noticing how good that closeness felt, because he knew what it meant. Not just attraction, not just curiosity. It meant that if he let it happen, it could become real. And real things didn't come without cost. Daniel had learned that, too. Monday felt smaller than usual. The office lights were too bright. The air smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. Daniel sat at his desk with his jacket still on, staring at his inbox like it had personally offended him. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw gray water. Wind. Sofia standing beside him on the dock saying Emma's name like it mattered. He shouldn't have told her. The thought had followed him all weekend. He'd picked Lily up from his mother's house Saturday evening. She ran into his arms talking too fast about pancakes in a movie she wasn't supposed to watch. He'd listened, nodding, smiling in the right places. He'd made dinner. He'd packed her purple lunchbox. He'd checked her homework. Normal. That was the word he kept reaching for. But Sunday night, after Lily fell asleep, he stood in the kitchen longer than he needed to, hands resting on the counter, staring at nothing. He could still feel the brush of Sofia's fingers when she handed him the antiseptic wipe. It was stupid. It was a small thing, and yet it had felt like a line shifting. Now he was back under fluorescent lights, pretending nothing had happened. He heard her voice before he saw her. She was in the conference room across the floor, leading the weekly operations meeting. The glass walls didn't block much sound. Daniel could catch pieces of what she was saying: deadlines, projections, staffing adjustments. Her tone was steady, controlled, professional. If anyone had seen them on the dock, they wouldn't recognize the woman in that room. Daniel focused on his screen. Numbers, reports, forecasts, safe things. Mark walked past his desk, slower than necessary. "Good race," Mark said casually, leaning one arm against the cubicle wall. Didn't know Martinez had that side to her. Daniel didn't look up. "What side?" Mark shrugged. "You know, competitive, relaxed." She actually smiled. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "She smiles at work," he said. Mark smirked. "Not like that." Daniel finally glanced up, just enough to meet Mark's eyes. There was something there. Not an accusation. Not exactly, just curiosity sharpened into something else. Daniel felt his pulse tick up. It was a team event, he said evenly. People act different outside the office. Mark held his gaze for a second longer than comfortable, then straightened. "Sure," he said lightly. "Just saying." He walked off. Daniel stared at his screen again, but the numbers blurred slightly. It had begun. Not anything concrete, just that subtle shift in how people looked at him, how they looked at her. He'd seen it before, in other offices, other jobs. People didn't need proof. They just needed proximity and imagination. The conference room door opened. Voices spilled out. Chairs scraped. Laptops snapped shut. Sofia stepped into the open floor space, tablet tucked under her arm. Her expression was composed, almost distant. She didn't look toward Daniel immediately. She spoke to two managers, nodding at something one of them said. Her posture was straight, her tone measured. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. Relief. She wasn't acting different. She wasn't avoiding him in a way that would draw attention. She wasn't looking at him in a way that would expose them. She walked past his desk without slowing. But as she did, her fingers tapped lightly against the edge of his cubicle wall. Once. It was subtle, almost absent-minded. No one else would notice. Daniel did. His shoulders stiffened. He didn't look up. He waited until her footsteps faded before exhaling. It was nothing. It was barely anything. But it was deliberate. An acknowledgement. Later that afternoon, Daniel was called into her office. The message came through his internal chat. "Can you step in for a minute?" Neutral. Professional. Daniel stood, smoothed the hand over his shirt without thinking, then walked down the hallway. He knocked once. "Come in," she said. Her office smelled faintly like citrus and paper. The blinds were half drawn, letting in filtered light. She was seated behind her desk, reviewing something on her screen. Daniel closed the door behind him, leaving it slightly open out of habit. Sofia glanced up. "Close it," she said quietly. Daniel hesitated. Then he shut it. The click sounded louder than it should have. He remained standing. "You wanted to see me?" Sofia leaned back slightly in her chair. She studied him for a moment, like she was deciding which version of him she was about to speak to. "HR spoke to me this morning," she said. Daniel's stomach tightened. "About what?" She held his gaze. "About us." The word landed heavier than it should have. Daniel's face stayed neutral. He forced it that way. "There is no us," he said. Sofia didn't argue. "They received a comment," she said. "Nothing formal, just a suggestion that our rapport might be unprofessional." Daniel's hands curled slightly at his sides. "From who?" "It doesn't matter. It does to me." Her jaw tightened, just a little. "It was anonymous." Daniel let out a slow breath through his nose. Of course it was. He thought of Mark, of the way people watched, of how little it took to turn speculation into something ugly. "We haven't done anything wrong," he said. "I know." "Then what's the issue?" Sofia stood. The movement caught him off guard. She walked around the desk slowly, stopping a few feet in front of him. "The issue," she said calmly, "is perception." Daniel looked down at her. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, the slight tension in her shoulders. "You told me about your wife," she said quietly. "On the dock." Daniel's throat tightened. "That was a conversation," he said, "not a violation." "I know that." "Then why does this feel like one?" Sofia inhaled slowly. "Because I'm your supervisor," she said. "And if anyone believes there's something more happening, it doesn't matter what the truth is." Daniel felt anger flicker in his chest. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be careful." The word careful made something in him snap. "I've been careful my entire life," he said, his voice low. "I've been careful since the day Emma got diagnosed. I've been careful with Lily, careful with money, careful with time, careful with everything." He took a step back, running a hand over his face. "And now I have to be careful about talking to someone who asked me how I was doing?" Sofia didn't flinch. She let him speak. When he finished, the silence stretched between them. Her voice, when it came, was softer. "I'm not asking you to shut down," she said. "I'm asking you to protect yourself." Daniel looked at her sharply. "From what?" "From being hurt." He almost laughed. "I'm already hurt." The words slipped out before he could stop them. They hung in the air between them. Sofia's eyes shifted slightly. Not pity, something else. Understanding. "That's exactly why," she said. Daniel's chest felt tight. He wanted to step closer. He wanted to step away. He did neither. "So what's the plan?" he asked finally. Sofia folded her arms loosely, not defensive, just holding herself steady. "We create distance," she said. "In public, we document everything. We keep our communications strictly work-related during office hours." Daniel stared at her. "And outside office hours?" A small pause. That depends on what we decide this is, she said. The room felt smaller. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, steady but heavy. He hated this. He hated that something fragile had barely started forming, and already it was under a microscope. He hated that she was right. We haven't decided anything, he said. No, she agreed. They stood there, the weight of the unspoken pressing down. Finally, Sofia stepped back toward her desk. I'll adjust reporting lines temporarily, she said. You'll report to Carlos for the next quarter. Daniel blinked. You're moving me? It's the cleanest solution. The words felt clinical, clean, like what they'd had on the dock needed to be sanitized. Daniel nodded once. Fine. Sofia sat down again, her face composed. This protects both of us, she said. Daniel didn't answer. He turned toward the door. His hand rested on the handle for a second longer than necessary. Sofia, he said quietly. She looked up. He hesitated. There were too many things he could say, too many things he shouldn't. Was any of it a mistake, he asked. Her expression didn't change immediately. Then, slowly, she shook her head. No, she said. Daniel opened the door and stepped back into the fluorescent light. The office noise swallowed him immediately. But something had shifted, not just in policy, in him. And this time, it wasn't the ocean pulling at his balance. It was the knowledge that wanting something real came with consequences he couldn't control. By Wednesday, the shift was visible. Not obvious, not dramatic, but there. Carlos had taken over Daniel's check-ins. The meetings were shorter, more mechanical. Carlos focused on numbers, not nuance. He didn't ask about Lily. He didn't notice when Daniel skipped lunch. It was easier in some ways. Daniel told himself that was a good sign. Sofia kept her distance with precision. In meetings, she addressed him the same way she addressed everyone else. No lingering eye contact. No quiet side comments. No subtle tap against his cubicle wall. If anyone had been watching before, they had less to work with now. Still, Daniel felt watched. It showed up in small ways. Conversations that stopped when he approached. Slack threads that went quiet. Mark's glance lasting half a second too long. Nothing solid enough to confront. Just enough to feel. Thursday afternoon, Daniel stayed late again. Not because he had to. Because going home too early made the apartment feel too quiet before Lily came back from his mother's. He was reviewing a report when he sensed movement near his desk. He looked up. Sofia. She didn't step inside his cubicle. She stayed in the aisle, tablet in hand. Do you have the Q4 revision? She asked. Her voice was neutral. It's in the shared drive, Daniel said. I can't find the updated version. He knew she could. He also knew she wouldn't be standing there if she didn't have a reason. He clicked through folders slowly, pulling it up on his screen. It's labeled Final under Sakti V3, he said. She nodded. A pause. The office was mostly empty now. The lights hummed. A cleaning cart squeaked somewhere down the hall. Sofia shifted her weight slightly. How's Lily? She asked, still in that same professional tone. Daniel felt something soften in his chest despite himself. She lost her other front tooth, he said. Sofia's mouth curved, just barely. Big weak. She thinks the tooth fairy is underpaying. Sofia let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. I'll have to speak to finance. The corner of Daniel's mouth twitched. The moment was light. Careful. Balanced on a thin line. Then footsteps approached. Mark. He slowed when he saw them. Still here? He asked, eyebrows lifting. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair. Yeah. Mark looked between them. Martinez, he said casually, HR is looking for you, something about next week's audit. Sofia didn't break posture. I'll find them, she said. Mark lingered. You two working on something together? He asked. The question was harmless on the surface. Daniel felt the tension under it. Sofia answered first. Q4 revisions, she said evenly. Daniel uploaded the wrong file earlier. Daniel didn't react. Mark nodded slowly. Right. He stood there another second, then walked off. The air shifted after he left. Sofia's jaw tightened slightly. I didn't upload the wrong file, Daniel said quietly. I know. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Her eyes met his then, just briefly. It wasn't about the file. It was about narrative. She straightened. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. Then she walked away. Daniel watched her go. He hated the distance. He hated the calculation. But he also understood it. Friday came with an email. Subject line: mandatory review, conduct and reporting structure. Daniel read it twice. It was formal this time. Not anonymous commentary. Not subtle perception. A complaint had been filed. Allegations of favoritism, emotional involvement, compromised oversight. Daniel sat very still at his desk, the words blurring slightly. His first reaction wasn't anger. It was fear. Not for himself. For her. He stood abruptly and walked toward Sofia's office. The door was closed. He knocked once. Come in. She was seated behind her desk, hands folded. A printed copy of the same email lay in front of her. She looked calm. Too calm. You saw it, she said. Daniel shut the door. Yes. A beat of silence. Who? He asked. Sofia shook her head slightly. It doesn't matter. It does. It doesn't change what we have to do. Daniel stepped closer to the desk. They think you're showing favoritism, he said. You moved me to Carlos. I know. They think we're involved. Sofia held his gaze. And are we? She asked quietly. The question hit him harder than the email. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. He thought about the doc, about Emma's name, about her fingers brushing his, about Lily's missing tooth. He thought about how careful he tried to be. Yes, he said finally, we are. The words settled between them. Sofia inhaled slowly. Then they're not entirely wrong, she said. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. This isn't about rules, he said. This is about someone trying to damage you. Sofia stood. She walked around the desk again, stopping in front of him. If I've compromised my position, she said calmly, that's on me. You didn't. I let it get personal. So did I. Her eyes softened slightly. That's not a defense. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. They can't penalize you for something that hasn't affected your work. They can investigate, she said. They can make it uncomfortable. They can question my judgment. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. I won't let that happen. Sofia's expression changed then. Not anger. Something steadier. You don't get to protect me from this, she said. He stared at her. I'm not fragile, Daniel. I know that. Then don't treat me like I am. The room felt tight. Daniel exhaled slowly. What do you want to do? He asked. Sofia didn't answer right away. She looked at him like she was measuring something. Full disclosure, she said finally. We tell HR we've developed personal feelings. We confirm you no longer report to me. We accept whatever review they conduct. Daniel blinked. That's it? That's integrity. He searched her face. You're not afraid? He asked. Of losing my job, she clarified. Yes. A small pause. I've built my career on being transparent, she said. I'm not going to start hiding now. Daniel felt both admiration and dread. This could cost you, he said. So could lying. He looked down briefly, then back up. And us? He asked. Sofia's voice dropped slightly. That depends on whether you think we're worth the risk. The question settled heavy. Daniel thought about Lily, about stability, about how fragile things already felt. He thought about how he'd felt on the boat, awake, present. He thought about standing on the dock, saying Emma's name without breaking. I don't want to lose you, he said. The words were quiet, not dramatic, just true. Sofia's eyes shifted slightly at that. You don't have me yet, she said gently. Daniel almost smiled. That's fair. Silence again. Then Sofia reached out. Not dramatically, just her hand resting lightly against his forearm. It was brief, but it was deliberate. "We'll handle this the right way," she said. Daniel nodded. He could feel the warmth of her hand even after she pulled it back. There was no rush of music, no sudden certainty, just two people standing in an office, choosing something that might complicate everything. And for the first time since Emma died, Daniel realized something uncomfortable. He wasn't just afraid of losing, he was afraid of living again, of letting something matter enough to hurt. HR scheduled the meeting for Monday. Daniel left the office that evening with the city already dark. He picked up Lily from his mother's. She ran into him again, all missing teeth and loud questions. "Dad, are you sad?" she asked suddenly as he buckled her into the car. He froze. "Why would I be sad?" She shrugged. "You look like when it rains inside your head." Daniel swallowed. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "It's not raining," he said quietly. But as he drove home, hands tight on the steering wheel, he wasn't sure that was true. Monday morning didn't explode. It arrived quietly. Daniel dressed slower than usual, not because he didn't know what to wear, because his hands felt heavier. He shaved carefully, watching his reflection like it might give something away. Lily sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, cereal getting soggy in her bowl. "Are you going to work?" she asked. "Or serious work?" He paused. "What's the difference?" She shrugged. "Serious work is when you forget to smile." Daniel forced a smile and then, just for her. It felt thin, but she accepted it. He dropped her at school and sat in the parking lot a few seconds longer than needed. Parents moved around his car, talking, herding children, living uncomplicated mornings. He drove to the office without turning on the radio. The HR meeting was scheduled for 10. Sofia was already inside the conference room when he arrived. She stood near the window, hands clasped loosely in front of her. Two HR representatives sat at the table with laptops open. Daniel took the chair beside her. Not touching, not looking at her. The meeting was clinical. Questions about timeline, about when feelings developed, about whether any decisions had been influenced, about performance reviews, about reporting structure. Daniel answered steadily, clear, direct, no hesitation. Yes, feelings had developed after the team-building event. No, there had been no favoritism. Yes, reporting lines had been adjusted immediately once perception became an issue. Sofia spoke with the same composure. Calm, transparent, not defensive. At one point, one of the HR reps asked, "Why disclose this now?" Sofia didn't blink. "Because integrity matters," she said. Daniel felt something settle in his chest when she said that. The meeting ended without fireworks. They would review. They would assess impact. They would follow up. It wasn't a verdict. It was suspension. Daniel and Sofia stepped into the hallway together. The office noise felt louder than usual. For a second, neither of them moved. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded once. "Yes." A pause. "You?" "Yes." And neither of them entirely believed the other. She walked away first. Daniel returned to his desk. Work continued. Emails, calls, forecast adjustments. Life didn't stop just because something fragile was under inspection. By Thursday, rumors had matured. Nothing direct, just tone shifts. Mark had stopped trying to hide it now. His glances were open, measuring. Jenna was polite but distant. Conversations felt clipped. Daniel felt the weight of it but didn't react. He'd survived worse. That evening, Lily had a school art show. Daniel almost forgot. He was halfway through a spreadsheet when the reminder buzzed on his phone. He stared at it, guilt hitting him sharp and fast. He packed up immediately. The school gym smelled like tempera paint and floor polish. Drawings were taped to folding boards, bright and uneven. Parents stood in clusters, smiling too big. Lily ran toward him the second she saw him. "You came! Of course I came!" She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward a display board. "That one's mine," she said, pointing to a painting that was mostly blue and green. "It's the ocean," she explained. "But the middle part is a storm." Daniel looked at it carefully. The brush strokes were heavy in the center, darker. The edges were lighter, calmer. "What's the storm about?" he asked. Lily shrugged. "It's just there." He crouched down to her level. "It's good," he said quietly. She studied his face. "You look different," she said. "How?" "Like when you're thinking too much." He smiled faintly. "That happens sometimes." They walked around the gym together. She introduced him to her teacher, to a girl named Hannah who wore glitter on her cheeks, to Hannah's mother, who asked what Daniel did for work. "Operations," he said simply. It felt far away in that room. After the show, Lily insisted on ice cream, even though it was cold outside. They sat in the small shop near their apartment. She talked with her mouth full. He listened. Halfway through her story about a boy who cried during math class, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced down. "Sofia." A message. "I'm outside." His pulse shifted. He looked up at Lily. "I need to step out for 1 minute," he said. "Don't miss the best part," she warned. "I won't." He stepped outside. Sofia stood near the curb, coat wrapped tight around her. The street light above her cast a soft glow across her face. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Her breath came out in visible clouds. "I had a meeting nearby," she said. Then after a second, "I wasn't sure if I should come." Daniel's chest tightened. "But you did," he said. She nodded. "I didn't want you going through this alone." The words weren't dramatic, just honest. Daniel looked back through the window. Lily was visible at the table, swinging her legs, spoon in hand. "She's inside," he said quietly. Sofia's gaze shifted to the window. "That's her?" "Yes." They stood in silence for a second. "She looks like you," Sofia said. Daniel let out a soft breath. "She looks like her mother." Sofia glanced at him. "I'd like to meet her," she said. The request landed heavier than he expected. Meeting Lily wasn't casual. It wasn't coffee. It was crossing into his real life. Daniel felt the instinct to protect Rise immediately. "It's complicated," he said. "I know. You being my supervisor, I won't be much longer." He looked at her sharply. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "HR suggested reassignment," she said, "to a different department, same level, less conflict." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Because of me? Because of perception?" He ran a hand over his face. "You shouldn't have to move. It's not a punishment. It feels like one." Sofia held his gaze steadily. "I'm choosing it," she said, "before they decide for me." Daniel didn't know what to say. The cold seeped through his jacket, but he barely felt it. "This is what I meant about cost," he said quietly. "Yes. And you're okay with it?" A small pause. "I'm not okay with losing something before it even begins." The words sat between them. Inside, Lily pressed her face briefly against the window, searching for him. Daniel's chest ached. "I can't let her get hurt," he said. Sofia's voice softened. "I know. That's not negotiable. I'm not asking you to negotiate her." He studied her face. There was no impatience there, no pressure, just steadiness. "Come inside," he said finally. The decision felt like stepping into deep water. Sofia's eyes flickered slightly. "Are you sure?" "No," he admitted, "but come anyway." They walked in together. The bell above the door chimed. Lily looked up immediately. Her eyes moved from Daniel to Sofia. Curious, open. Daniel crouched beside her. "Lily," he said gently, "this is Sofia. She works with me." Lily wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Hi," she said. Sofia crouched too, keeping a respectful distance. "Hi, Lily. Your dad talks about you." Daniel blinked. "I do?" "Yes," Sofia said calmly, not looking at him. Lily tilted her head. "Did you do the boat race?" Sofia smiled faintly. "Yes." "Did you win?" "Almost." Lily nodded like that was acceptable. Daniel watched the two of them carefully. Sofia didn't try too hard. She didn't overperform warmth. She just asked Lily about her painting, about the storm in the middle. Lily explained it with serious concentration. Sofia listened like it mattered. Daniel felt something shift in his chest again. Not fear this time, something else. Hope. And hope scared him more than rumor ever could. Because rumor could damage reputation. Hope could change everything. They didn't stay long. Sofia stood first. "It was nice to meet you, Lily," she said. "You too," Lily replied. Then she leaned toward Daniel and whispered loudly, "She's nice." Daniel felt his face warm. Sofia heard it anyway. Outside, the air felt sharper. "Thank you," Sofia said. "For what?" "For letting me in." Daniel looked at her. He didn't know if he'd done the right thing. He didn't know if any of this would survive the scrutiny waiting at work. But he knew one thing. Watching Sofia kneel in front of Lily and treat her like a person, not an accessory. It had mattered, and he couldn't pretend it hadn't. Lily talked about Sofia the entire walk home. Not in a dramatic way, just small comments. "She didn't talk to me like I was 5. She asked about the storm part twice. She has serious eyes." Daniel listened, keys cold in his hand, shoulders tight without meaning to be. Serious eyes. That sounded right. When they got home, Lily ran to her room to finish a drawing she'd started earlier. Daniel stood in the kitchen, staring at the sink. There were 2 plates from the night before he hadn't washed. He rolled up his sleeves and turned on the water. He tried to focus on simple things. Soap, sponge, rinse. But his mind kept replaying the moment Sofia crouched down, steady and unafraid. She hadn't tried to win Lily over. She hadn't looked at Daniel for reassurance. She'd just been present. That was harder to fake than charm. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Sofia. "Thank you again. She's special." Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. He typed back. "She is." He erased it. Typed again. "I don't introduce Lily to people lightly." He sent it before he could overthink it. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "I understand the weight of that." He read it twice. Weight. That was the right word. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat on the edge of his bed with the lamp off. The apartment hummed softly around him. Pipes. Distant traffic. The refrigerator cycling on and off. He wasn't used to letting new people near Lily. After Emma died, there had been well-meaning relatives, friends, people who said they wanted to help. Most of them drifted away when they realized help meant consistency. Daniel had learned to expect that. Sofia didn't feel temporary. That was the problem. The next morning, the office felt tighter. Daniel noticed it the second he stepped inside. Conversations dropped a fraction when he passed. 2 junior analysts stopped mid-sentence near the printer. He didn't slow down. Carlos called him into a brief check-in around noon. "You're aware there's chatter," Carlos said, not unkindly. Daniel sat back in the chair. "Yes." Carlos sighed lightly. "You're good at your job. I don't want this distracting you." "It won't." Carlos held his gaze like he was trying to measure the truth of that. "Keep your head down," he said finally. Daniel almost laughed at the simplicity of it. He'd been keeping his head down for years. It hadn't stopped anything. That afternoon, HR sent a follow-up email. They would complete the review by the end of next week. Sofia's reassignment request was under consideration. Daniel stared at that line longer than the rest. Reassignment. Permanent. He felt a sharp mix of gratitude and guilt. She was moving because of him. Because of them. He told himself she was choosing it. That didn't make it lighter. At 5:30, as the office began to thin out, Daniel stepped into the break room to grab water. Mark was there. Leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "Big week," Mark said casually. Daniel filled his glass. "Seems like it." Mark watched him too closely. "Didn't expect you to be the type," Mark added. Daniel looked up slowly. "What type?" "You know." Mark shrugged. "Sleeping your way up. The words landed flat and ugly. Daniel set the glass down carefully. "Be careful," he said quietly. Mark smirked. "Relax. It's a joke." "It's not." Mark's expression shifted slightly. "You think people don't notice?" he said. "She moves you off her team and suddenly you're meeting after hours." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest, but his voice stayed even. "You don't know what you're talking about." Mark pushed off the counter. "Just saying," he said again. "HR doesn't investigate nothing." He walked out. Daniel stood very still. His pulse pounded in his ears, but his face stayed blank. He dealt with worse than gossip. But this wasn't just about him. It was about her reputation, about the years she'd built without scandal. He left work without looking for Sofia. That felt deliberate. That felt necessary. At home, Lily was sprawled on the living room floor, coloring. "Dad," she said without looking up, "is Sofia coming over again?" The question stopped him mid-step. "Why would you think that?" She shrugged. "You look like when you're waiting for something." He crouched down beside her. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. "Do you like her?" Lily asked. Children didn't circle around things. They walked straight through them. Daniel sat back on his heels. "Yes," he said. Lily considered that. "Is she going to leave?" The question hit deeper. Why would she leave? "People leave," Lily said simply. He swallowed. "I don't know," he admitted. Lily nodded, like that answer made sense. She returned to coloring. Daniel stood slowly and walked into the kitchen. People leave. Emma hadn't meant to. But she had. Daniel leaned his hands against the counter and closed his eyes briefly. He couldn't promise Lily permanence. He couldn't promise himself that either. That night, Sofia called instead of texting. He hesitated before answering. "Hi," he said. Her voice came through soft but steady. "I heard about Mark." Daniel exhaled slowly. "News travels." "Yes." A pause. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I've been called worse." "That's not what I meant." He sat down at the kitchen table. "I'm fine," he said. "It's noise. It's targeted noise." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He could hear her breathing on the other end, the faint hum of traffic near wherever she was. "I don't regret this," she said quietly. The words caught him off guard. "This?" he repeated. "Whatever this is becoming." Daniel stared at the dark window across from him. "I do," he said, before he could stop himself. Silence. Then, "You regret it?" "I regret the cost," he clarified. "Not you." Another pause. "I can handle cost," she said. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I'm not sure Lily can." Sofia didn't rush to answer. "I don't want to hurt her," she said finally. "I know. And I don't want to be something temporary in her life." Daniel's grip tightened slightly on the phone. "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't do halfway," she said. Her tone wasn't dramatic. It was firm. "If I'm in," she continued, "I'm in." The simplicity of it made his chest tighten. He'd spent years surviving in fragments, one day at a time, one manageable piece at a time. Sofia was talking about something whole. "That scares me," he admitted. "I know. But it doesn't scare you." "It does," she said. "I'm just not running from it." Daniel closed his eyes. He could feel the weight of Emma's memory like a quiet presence in the room. He could feel Lily's trust like something fragile in his hands, and he could feel Sofia's steadiness on the other end of the line. "I don't want to lose you," he said again, softer this time. "You won't," she replied. "You can't promise that." "No," she agreed, "but I can promise I won't disappear when it gets hard." The words settled slowly. Daniel let out a long breath. "HR finalizes next week," he said. "Yes, and if they push you out, then I find another position." "You'd leave?" "For integrity?" "Yes." The answer was immediate. Daniel felt something shift again. not excitement, respect, and fear tangled together. I didn't ask you to do that, he said. I know. They sat in shared silence for a moment. Then Sofia spoke again. Let me come to Lily's soccer practice Saturday, she said. Daniel hesitated. That's a lot. I'm not asking to replace anything, she said. Just to show up. Show up. That word carried weight. Daniel looked toward Lily's closed bedroom door. She'll notice, he said. I know. He let the silence stretch. Finally, he said, okay. Not because it was safe, because it felt honest. After he hung up, he sat there a long time. The apartment felt different. Not lighter, just less isolated. For years, Daniel had built walls out of necessity. Now someone was standing outside them, not demanding entry, just waiting. And he wasn't sure whether letting her in would protect them, or change everything in ways he couldn't undo. Saturday morning came with rain, not heavy rain, the kind that hung in the air and made everything smell like wet pavement. Daniel drove Lily to the soccer field with the wipers on low, his hands steady on the wheel. Lily hummed to herself in the back seat, tying and untying the string on her hoodie. Is Sofia really coming? She asked. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. Yes. Why? The question was blunt, like all of hers. She wants to see you again, he said. Lily thought about that. Does she want to see you too? Daniel didn't answer right away. His throat tightened slightly. Yes, he said finally. Lily leaned forward between the seats. Are you going to marry her? Daniel nearly swerved. Lily, what? She asked. Innocent. That's not, he exhaled, gripping the steering wheel harder. That's not something we talk about like that. Lily shrugged and leaned back again. I just don't want you to be lonely forever, she said. The words sat in the car like something too big for a child to say. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't know how to. The soccer field was muddy. Parents stood under umbrellas, some in folding chairs despite the damp ground. Kids ran around in bright jerseys, slipping in the grass, laughing anyway. Lily sprinted off to her teammates without looking back. Daniel stayed near the sideline, hands in his pockets. He checked his phone once, no messages. He told himself not to care, but his eyes kept scanning the parking lot. When Sofia finally arrived, she didn't come rushing in late and apologetic. She walked across the grass carefully, holding a small umbrella and a paper bag. Daniel watched her approach. She wore jeans, boots, and a simple dark coat. Her hair was down, slightly damp from the air. She looked like herself, but softer than the office version. Not dressed to impress, just dressed to be there. She stopped in front of him. I brought coffee, she said. Daniel glanced at the bag. You didn't have to. I know, she said, but I wanted to. She handed him a cup. Their fingers touched again, brief and unavoidable. Daniel felt the familiar jolt. Sofia's eyes moved toward the field. She's already playing. Warm-ups, Daniel said. Sofia nodded, taking it in quietly. She didn't force conversation. She didn't act like she belonged. She just stood beside him, watching Lily run. Daniel tried to breathe normally. He didn't like this kind of exposure. Out here, there were no office walls, no titles, no rules to hide behind. Just people, parents, real life. Lily spotted Sofia almost immediately. She waved wildly. Sofia lifted her hand and waved back, small and careful. Daniel saw Lily's grin widen before she sprinted back to her group. It was such a small moment, but Daniel felt it hit somewhere deep, like a door cracking open. The game started. Lily played hard, slipping once in the mud and popping right back up. Daniel found himself smiling despite everything. Sofia watched with her arms folded loosely, eyes attentive. She's fearless, Sofia said quietly. Daniel nodded. She didn't used to be, he admitted. Sofia glanced at him. What changed? Daniel hesitated. Then he said, she learned she has to be. Sofia didn't respond right away. She just nodded slowly, as if she understood the weight behind it. Halfway through the game, another parent stepped near them. A woman Daniel recognized vaguely, Stephanie, from Lily's class. She smiled brightly. Daniel, she said. Hi. I didn't know you brought someone. Daniel felt his shoulders tighten. This is Sofia, he said. She's a friend. The word friend sounded thin. Sofia extended her hand politely. Nice to meet you. Stephanie shook it, still smiling, eyes flicking between them. And you're Lily's mom? She asked. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Before he could answer, Sofia spoke calmly. No, she said. Her mom passed away. Stephanie's smile faltered. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, she stammered. Daniel's jaw clenched. It's fine, he said quickly. Stephanie mumbled something about needing to grab her son's jacket and hurried away. Daniel stared at the field, but his vision blurred slightly. Sofia didn't look at him. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. It's not your fault. He took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. She always asks, he muttered. People always ask. Sofia's voice stayed low. Do you want me to leave? Daniel turned to her. No. The answer came too fast. Sofia studied him. Daniel felt exposed again, but in a different way, not by rumors, by the simple truth of how quickly he didn't want her gone. The game ended with Lily's team losing by 1 point. She didn't care. She ran off the field laughing, mud on her knees, hair sticking to her forehead. She ran straight toward Sofia. Did you see me? She asked breathlessly. Sofia crouched. I did, she said. You were fast. Lily beamed. I almost scored 2 goals. I believe it. Daniel watched them. He didn't speak. He just stood there, holding his coffee cup, feeling something twist inside him, something fragile. Because it wasn't just that Lily liked her, it was that Lily trusted her quickly. That scared him. After the game, Sofia stayed while Lily ate orange slices and talked too loudly with her teammates. Then Sofia walked with Daniel and Lily back to the car. Lily climbed into the back seat. Sofia stood by the passenger door. Thank you for letting me come, she said. Daniel nodded once. You handled that mom question well, he said quietly. Sofia's expression tightened slightly. I didn't want you to have to say it. Daniel swallowed. Most people don't know what to do with it, he admitted. Sofia looked at him steadily. I do. The words felt like a promise, even if she didn't mean them that way. Daniel stared at her. He wanted to touch her. He didn't. He couldn't do it in a parking lot with Lily in the back seat and parents still watching. Instead, he said, Do you want to come over for dinner? Sofia blinked. You're asking me? Daniel exhaled slowly. Yes. There was a long pause. Sofia's gaze softened. I'd like that, she said. Daniel nodded. Okay. It was simple, but his chest felt tight like he just agreed to something huge. At home, Daniel cooked pasta. Nothing impressive. He kept it safe. Tomato sauce, garlic bread, salad. Lily set the table like it was a holiday. She used the good napkins. Daniel watched her, a strange ache in his chest. Sofia arrived at 6 carrying a small bag. Wine, she said, holding it up. Daniel shook his head. I don't drink much. I wasn't sure, she said. So I also brought dessert. She pulled out a small box of cookies. Lily lit up. Those are the ones with the chocolate inside. Sofia smiled. I was told those are important. Daniel felt something tighten again. Important. Small things mattered in their house. Dinner was quieter than Daniel expected. Not awkward, just real. Lily talked most of the time, telling Sofia about school, about her teacher's pet turtle, about how she wanted a dog. Sofia listened, asked questions, laughed softly at the right moments. Daniel found himself watching Sofia's hands as she held her fork, the way she nodded while listening, the way she didn't rush Lily. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Sofia her room. Daniel stayed in the kitchen, rinsing plates, listening to their voices down the hall. Lily's excited chatter, Sofia's calm replies. It sounded normal. Daniel's throat tightened unexpectedly. He turned the faucet off and leaned against the sink, eyes closed. This was what he'd been afraid of. Not Sofia. Not gossip, not HR. This. The sound of his daughter letting someone new into her world. Because once that happened, there was no going back. When Lily and Sofia returned, Lily looked happy in a way that made Daniel feel both warmth and dread. "She likes my drawings," Willie announced. "I do," Sofia said. Lily yawned suddenly, her energy dropping like a switch. Daniel touched her shoulder. "Bedtime," he said gently. Lily groaned but didn't fight. Sofia stood. "I should go," she said quietly. Daniel looked at her. "You don't have to rush." Sofia hesitated. Then she nodded once. "Okay." Daniel tucked Lily into bed. She was half asleep already. As he pulled the blanket up, Lily whispered, "Don't mess this up, Dad." Daniel froze. "What?" Lily's eyes stayed closed. "You always get scared," she murmured, "and then you make it small." Daniel's throat tightened hard. He brushed her hair back gently. "Go to sleep," he whispered. She didn't respond. Her breathing deepened. Daniel stood there in the dark room, staring at her small face, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. When he stepped back into the hallway, Sofia was waiting near the living room. The apartment lights were dim. She looked tired, but calm. Daniel stood in front of her, hands at his sides. "She likes you," he said quietly. Sofia's eyes softened. "I like her too." Daniel swallowed. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. Sofia nodded slowly. "That's okay." He looked at her, and something in him finally broke loose. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, exhausted way. "I can't lose another person," he said. The words were barely louder than a breath. Sofia stepped closer. "You won't lose me because you're afraid," she said, "but you might lose me if you keep pretending you don't want this." Daniel's chest tightened. He stared at her. Then he reached out and took her hand. His grip was careful, like he was holding something fragile. Sofia didn't pull away. She squeezed back. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It felt like truth, and Daniel realized, standing there in his small living room, that the danger wasn't the rumors outside. The danger was how quickly he was starting to believe he deserved something good again. The next week didn't give them time to breathe. Monday morning, Daniel dropped Lily off at school and sat in the car again, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the building. He didn't go inside right away. He thought about Lily's words from the night before, how she'd said them half asleep, like it was something she'd been holding in for a while. "You make it small." He hated that she'd notice. He hated that she was right. At work, the HR review moved faster than expected. By lunchtime, Sofia texted him. "Meeting at 3. Conference room B." Daniel stared at the message until the screen dimmed. At 3, he walked down the hallway with his jaw clenched. He could already feel the atmosphere. People weren't pretending anymore. Eyes followed him in quiet, quick glances. Conference room B had the blinds down. Sofia sat at the table. 2 HR reps again. A legal advisor this time. Daniel took the seat beside her, still not touching. But he could feel her presence like heat to the space between their arms. The HR woman spoke first, voice neutral. "Thank you both for your transparency. We've reviewed the complaint and interviewed relevant staff." Daniel's stomach tightened. Sofia didn't move. "We found no evidence of favoritism in performance evaluations or project assignments," the HR rep continued. "However, we did find repeated instances of after-hours communication not related to work." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Texting wasn't a crime. But he knew how it sounded. The legal advisor leaned forward. "Our recommendation," he said, "is immediate formal separation. Miss Martinez will be reassigned out of operations. Mr. Juz Brooks will remain under Carlos Rivera." Sofia nodded once, like she'd expected it. The HR rep continued. "Additionally, due to the perception issues and the workplace impact, we will require both of you to sign a conduct agreement. It includes a clause requiring disclosure if the relationship becomes official." Daniel felt the word official settle like something heavy in his chest. Sofia glanced toward him briefly, then back to HR. "That's acceptable," she said. Daniel didn't speak. His throat felt tight. He didn't like being told what his private life was allowed to become, but he also understood the reality. They didn't have the luxury of being careless. The meeting ended with signatures and quiet professionalism. No shouting, no punishment, just paperwork that confirmed something Daniel hadn't wanted to admit yet. This was real enough to have consequences. When they stepped into the hallway, Sofia didn't head back toward her office. She stopped near the window at the end of the corridor. Daniel followed. He stood beside her, both of them facing the city below. For a moment, neither spoke. Sofia exhaled slowly. "I'm moving to compliance," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's a good move. It's not what I wanted." Daniel's chest tightened. "What did you want?" Sofia looked at him then. Her expression wasn't soft. It was steady. "I wanted you without it costing everything else." Daniel swallowed. He didn't know how to respond to that, because it wasn't possible. Not in their world. Not in this building where people watched and measured and waited for mistakes. Daniel's phone buzzed. A message from Carlos. "Need you in my office." Daniel stared at it. He felt his stomach drop. Sofia saw his face change. "What?" she asked. He showed her the phone. Sofia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go," she said. Daniel nodded. He walked quickly down the hall. Carlos's office door was open. Carlos sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. Daniel closed the door behind him. Carlos gestured for him to sit. Daniel sat. Carlos leaned back. "I'll be direct," Carlos said. "Mark filed the complaint." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Of course," Carlos continued. "He's been documenting your interactions with Sofia for weeks. He provided screenshots of Slack messages, calendar overlaps, and a written statement claiming you've been receiving preferential treatment." Daniel's hands clenched on his knees. "He's lying," Daniel said. Carlos nodded. "HR agrees they found no evidence of favoritism." "Then why are you telling me this?" Carlos's gaze sharpened. "Because Mark is pushing it further. He's now accusing Sofia of retaliation and claiming she's trying to destroy his career by reassigning him off a project." Daniel stared. "That's insane." "It is," Carlos said calmly, "but it's dangerous because he's loud. And he's been here long enough that some people will listen." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. Mark wasn't just gossiping, he was aiming. Daniel stood abruptly. "I want to speak to HR." Carlos lifted a hand. "Sit down." Daniel hesitated, then sat. Carlos leaned forward slightly. "You need to understand something," Carlos said. "Mark is looking for a scapegoat, and you're convenient." Daniel's throat tightened. Carlos continued, "And Sofia is a woman in leadership. That makes her convenient too." Daniel felt his jaw clench so hard it hurt. "So what do we do?" he asked. Carlos was quiet for a moment. "HR is considering termination," he said. Daniel's head snapped up. "Of Mark?" Carlos nodded. "But they're hesitant. He's threatening legal action. He's claiming discrimination." Daniel felt sick. Not because Mark might sue, because Sofia was paying for it. "She doesn't deserve this," Daniel said. Carlos held his gaze. "I agree," he said. "Which is why I'm telling you, do not confront Mark. Don't give him a reason to say you threatened him. Don't give him a story." Daniel's hands curled into fists. Daniel didn't trust himself to speak. Carlos's voice softened slightly. "Daniel," he said, "you're a good employee. You're a good father. But you're walking into something messy. And messy things get weaponized." Daniel stared at the desk. The words "good father" hit him in a place that didn't feel deserved. He stood slowly. "What happens to Sofia?" he asked. Carlos exhaled. "She'll survive it," he said, "but she shouldn't have to." Daniel left the office feeling like the air was too thin. He walked back to his desk, but he couldn't focus. He stared at spreadsheets that didn't make sense. His thoughts kept circling Mark. The way he'd smirked. The way he'd said, "sleeping your way up." Daniel understood something now. Mark wasn't jealous of Daniel. Mark was angry that Sofia hadn't been interested in him, and Daniel was the easiest person to punish for it. That evening, Sofia called. Daniel answered immediately. Carlos told me, he said before she could speak. Sofia was quiet. So you know it was Mark? Yes. Her voice was controlled. HR is meeting with him tomorrow. Daniel paced the living room slowly, careful not to wake Lily. This isn't about work, he said. This is personal. Yes, Sofia replied. Daniel's throat tightened. I want to confront him. No, Sofia said immediately. Don't. He's ruining you. Sofia's tone sharpened slightly. He's trying to, she corrected, and you confronting him will give him exactly what he wants. Daniel stopped pacing. He stared at the dark hallway leading to Lily's room. I can't just stand here, he said. Sofia's voice softened again. You can, she said, because that's how you protect Lily. That's how you protect yourself. And that's how you protect me. Daniel's jaw tightened. He hated that she was right. He hated that being calm felt like surrender. Sofia continued. Daniel, she said quietly, if you do something reckless, you'll lose your job. And if you lose your job, you'll lose stability. And Lily will feel it. Daniel's throat tightened. She already feels too much, he said. Yes, Sofia agreed. So let's not give her more. Daniel leaned his forehead against the wall. The cool paint grounded him slightly. After a long silence, Sofia spoke again. I need to tell you something, she said. Daniel straightened. What? Sofia hesitated. I was offered a promotion, she said. 2 weeks ago, before all of this. Daniel blinked. What kind of promotion? Regional director track, she said quietly. It was unofficial, but it was real. Daniel's chest tightened. And now? Sofia's voice stayed calm, but there was something underneath it. Now it's gone, she said. Not because I did anything wrong, because leadership doesn't want complications. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's not fair. I know. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he said. Sofia was quiet. Then she said, don't apologize for existing in my life. Daniel closed his eyes. It feels like you're losing things because of me, he said. Sofia's voice was low. I'm losing opportunities, she said, but I'm not losing myself. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't know how to carry that. Sofia continued. I've spent my entire career being careful, she said, doing everything right. Saying the right thing, being perfect. Her breath came out slowly, and it still didn't protect me. Daniel listened, heart heavy. So I'm not going to let fear make my decisions, she said. Not anymore. Daniel's voice was rough. What are you saying? I'm saying, Sofia said quietly, I want you. I want Lily. I want this life, even if it's messy. Daniel felt his chest tighten painfully. He thought about Lily's painting, the storm in the middle. He thought about how he'd lived in that storm for years. He didn't want to drag Sofia into it. But she was already there. And she wasn't asking to be rescued. She was choosing it. Daniel swallowed. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Sofia's voice softened. Then learn with me. The words weren't poetic. They were simple, and that made them hit harder. Daniel stared into the dark living room, his hands shaking slightly. I'm scared, he said. I know, but I want you, he said. Silence. Then Sofia exhaled, almost like relief. Good, she said, because I'm not walking away. Daniel stood there a long time after the call ended. The apartment was still. Lily's quiet breathing came faintly from her room. Daniel looked at the framed photo on the shelf, Emma holding Lily as a baby, both of them smiling. He stared at it until his eyes burned. He didn't feel betrayal. He didn't feel guilt the way he thought he would. He felt grief, yes, but underneath it, something else. A quiet understanding that loving again didn't erase what he'd lost. It just meant he was still alive. And for the first time in years, that truth didn't feel like an insult. It felt like a responsibility, The week Mark was supposed to be dealt with, the office went tense in a way Daniel could feel in his skin. People stopped laughing in the break room. Meetings became shorter, emails were colder, everyone moved like they were trying not to touch something contagious. Daniel stayed quiet. He did his work. He kept his head down. He didn't look for Mark, even when he heard his voice in the hallway. He didn't speak to Sofia unless it was necessary. But the silence between him and Sofia wasn't empty anymore. It was loaded. They were both holding something back, and Daniel could feel it, even when they were on opposite sides of a conference table. On Thursday afternoon, HR called Daniel in again. This time, it wasn't conference room B. It was a smaller room on the third floor, windowless, with beige walls and a round table that looked like it had never seen a real conversation. Sofia was already there. Mark was there too. Daniel froze for half a second when he saw him. Mark looked comfortable, almost smug, like he'd been waiting for this. A legal advisor sat beside him. HR sat across from them. Sofia sat straight-backed, hands folded. Her face was calm in a way that didn't look natural, like she practiced it. Daniel took the empty chair beside her. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at Mark. He stared at the table. The HR representative cleared her throat. "We're here to address ongoing workplace conflict," she said, "and to resolve allegations of harassment, retaliation, and misconduct." Mark shifted in his chair and smiled slightly. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. The HR rep turned to Mark. "Mr. Landon, you've submitted multiple complaints. You've also been warned twice about inappropriate comments." Mark's smile didn't disappear. "I've been punished for telling the truth," he said. Daniel finally looked at him. Mark met his eyes with something like satisfaction. The HR rep continued. "You've alleged that Ms. Martinez engaged in a relationship with Mr. Brooks in exchange for loyalty and performance." Daniel's chest tightened. Sofia's expression didn't change. Mark leaned back. "It's obvious," he said. "Everyone sees it." Daniel felt his hands curl into fists under the table. The HR rep held up a folder. "However," she said, "we have reviewed the evidence. Your screenshots are largely taken out of context. The communications were not inappropriate in content." Mark's lawyer leaned in and whispered something. Mark's smile faltered slightly. The HR rep continued. "Additionally, we've received reports that you have made repeated derogatory statements about Ms. Martinez to coworkers, including comments implying she advanced through sexual relationships." Daniel's stomach turned. Mark shrugged. "It's a male-dominated industry," he said. "People talk." Sofia's fingers tightened slightly against each other. Daniel noticed. No one else seemed to. HR's tone sharpened. "Mr. Landon, that is not acceptable." Mark looked directly at Sofia. "Maybe if you didn't play favorites, people wouldn't assume," he said. The words were aimed like a blade. Daniel's chair scraped slightly as he shifted. Sofia spoke before he could. "Stop," she said quietly. Not loud, but it cut through the room. Mark smirked. "You don't get to tell me to stop," he said. "You don't get to control the narrative anymore." Daniel felt his pulse spike. The legal advisor beside Mark cleared his throat. "My client has expressed concern about retaliation." Sofia interrupted again, voice steady. "You're not a victim," she said. Mark's face tightened. Daniel could see it now. The anger under the smirk. Mark leaned forward slightly. "Tell them," he said to Sofia. "Tell them you didn't invite him to your place after the race. Tell them you didn't start this." Daniel's chest tightened. Sofia's gaze didn't waver. "We didn't start anything inappropriately," she said. Mark laughed once, short and ugly. "You're unbelievable." Daniel couldn't stay silent anymore. "You're obsessed," Daniel said, voice low. The room went still. HR looked at him sharply. Mark's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "Obsessed?" Mark repeated. "That's rich." He turned to HR. "You see," he said. "He's aggressive. He thinks he owns her." Daniel felt heat flood his chest. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to grab Mark by the collar and slam him into the beige wall until his smug expression broke. But he stayed seated. His fingers dug into his own palm. Sofia's hand moved under the table and touched Daniel's knee, just briefly. A grounding gesture. Not affection, a warning. Don't. Daniel swallowed hard. The HR rep spoke again. Mr. Heimel, Landon, due to your conduct, we are terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hit the room like a heavy object. Mark blinked. What? His lawyer stiffened. You can't do that, Mark said, voice rising. You can't just. HR's voice stayed even. We can, she said. And we are. Mark's face flushed. This is because of her, he spat, pointing at Sofia. Because she's protected. Because she's a woman and you're all terrified of getting sued. Sofia didn't move. Daniel watched Mark's anger spiral. Mark stood abruptly, chair scraping hard. This company is disgusting, he snapped. And you too. His gaze landed on Daniel, full of contempt. You think you won? You think this is over? Daniel's throat tightened. Mark leaned closer, voice dropping. You're going to ruin her, he said. And when you do, she'll hate you for it. Daniel felt his blood go cold. HR told Mark to leave. Security was called. Mark walked out with his lawyer, still talking, still furious, still loud enough for the hallway to hear. When the door shut behind him, the room fell silent. Daniel's breathing was shallow. Sofia sat perfectly still. HR spoke again, tone shifting back to formal. We appreciate your cooperation, she said. Ms. Martinez, your reassignment remains effective immediately. Mr. Don Brooks, you will remain under Mr. Rivera. This matter is considered closed. Closed. Closed, Daniel stared at the table. Nothing felt closed. When the meeting ended, Sofia walked out first. Daniel followed. The hallway was empty. He caught up to her near the elevator. Sofia, he said. She didn't stop at first. Then she did. She turned to him. Her eyes looked tired. Not physically tired. Not physically tired. Something deeper. Daniel swallowed. I'm sorry, he said. Sofia shook her head slightly. No, she said. Don't. Daniel stared at her. You lost that promotion, he said quietly. You lost your department. You got dragged into a room with him and his lawyer. Sofia's jaw tightened. And you think I regret you? Daniel didn't answer. Because part of him did think that. Not because he didn't want her. Because he didn't want her to suffer. Sofia stepped closer. Her voice dropped. I've been disrespected by men like Mark my entire career, she said. Not loudly, quietly. In meetings. In jokes. In assumptions. Daniel listened, throat tight. And I let it happen, she continued. Because it was easier than fighting every time. She paused. But you didn't let it happen. Daniel's eyes flickered. I almost did, he admitted. Sofia's gaze softened. But you didn't. Daniel exhaled slowly. I wanted to hit him, he said. I know. Daniel stared at the elevator doors. I'm scared he's right, he said quietly. That I'm going to ruin you. Sofia's voice was steady. You're not that powerful, she said. Daniel blinked. It was such a blunt sentence, it almost made him laugh. But it didn't. It made his chest ache. Sofia continued. You didn't take anything from me, she said. This company took it. People like Mark took it. Fear took it. She paused. But I'm still here. Daniel looked at her. He felt something inside him shift again. Not relief. Responsibility. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Sofia didn't step in. Instead, she looked at him and said, Come over tonight. Daniel's stomach tightened. Tonight? Yes. He hesitated. What about Lily? She can come too, Sofia said. Or your mom can watch her. I'm not asking you to hide her. Daniel swallowed. The directness of it made his chest tight. He nodded once. Okay. Sofia stepped into the elevator. The doors closed between them. Daniel stood in the hallway alone. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel like anything had been won. He felt like he'd just watched something ugly and familiar unfold. And for the first time, he hadn't stayed silent through it. He went back to his desk, finished the day mechanically, and left as soon as he could. On the drive home, Lily sang to herself in the back seat, making up words to a song she didn't know. Daniel listened. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He realized he'd been carrying anger for years. Not just grief, anger at how unfair everything had been. At Emma's illness, at the bills, at the way people looked at him when they found out he was a widower. Anger at being pitied. He'd buried it under routine. Now it was surfacing not as violence, but as clarity. At home, his mother agreed to keep Lily overnight without asking many questions. She watched Daniel closely while Lily put her shoes on. "You look different," she said quietly. Daniel didn't answer. He kissed Lily's forehead, promised pancakes in the morning, and left. Sofia's apartment was on the other side of the city. Quieter, cleaner. The building lobby smelled like fresh paint and expensive soap. When she opened the door, she wasn't dressed up. Just jeans and a sweater. Her hair was damp like she'd showered recently. She looked real. Daniel stepped inside. The apartment was neat, but lived in. Books stacked on a shelf, a small plant near the window, a framed photo of Sofia with two older women, maybe her mother and aunt, standing close together. Daniel paused. Sofia noticed his gaze. "My mom and my sister," she said. Daniel nodded. He didn't ask more. They stood in the entryway, both of them quiet. Sofia shut the door. The sound of the lock sliding into place made Daniel's pulse jump. Not because he was nervous about her, because he was nervous about what it meant to be there. Sofia stepped closer. "Are you okay?" she asked. Daniel stared at her. "I don't know," he admitted. Sofia nodded. "Then just be here," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't move. Then Sofia reached out and touched his cheek, her fingers warm. The gesture was slow. Careful. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He didn't kiss her, not yet. He just leaned into her hand like he'd been starving for something he didn't know how to ask for. When he opened his eyes again, Sofia was watching him with quiet steadiness. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Daniel swallowed hard. He nodded once. And in that moment, he knew he believed her. They didn't rush. That was the strange part. Daniel had expected in some corner of his mind that being alone together like that would feel like pressure, like a release, like something inevitable. Instead, it felt quiet. Sofia led him into the living room and turned on a small lamp. The light was warm, low. It softened the space without trying to make it romantic. It just made it easier to breathe. Daniel sat on the edge of her couch like he wasn't sure he was allowed to take up space. Sofia disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of water. She set one in front of him, then sat down a careful distance away. For a minute, neither of them spoke. Daniel stared at the glass. His hand hovered over it but didn't pick it up. Sofia watched him. "You're still bracing," she said quietly. Daniel let out a slow breath. "I don't know how to stop." Sofia nodded once. "I can tell." Daniel's fingers finally wrapped around the glass. The water was cold. It grounded him. He took a sip. Then he looked up at her. "I keep thinking about what Mark said," he admitted. Sofia didn't ask what. She already knew. "They're not going to ruin me," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You don't know what I do to people," he said. The words came out harsher than he meant, but they were honest. Sofia's expression didn't change. Daniel continued, voice lower now. "Emma got sick, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix it. I watched her disappear, piece by piece, and all I could do was pretend I was fine so Lily wouldn't be scared." He swallowed hard. "And then she died. And everyone kept telling me how strong I was, like I had a choice." Sofia's eyes stayed on him, steady. Daniel's throat tightened. "I don't know how to be with someone without expecting them to vanish," he said. Sofia leaned forward slightly. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I'm not Emma." The sentence hit him harder than he expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. He looked down at his hands. I know, he whispered. Sofia's voice softened. And you're not responsible for what happened to her. Daniel's jaw tightened. I should have caught it earlier, he said. I should have pushed for different doctors, different treatment. I should have. You can torture yourself forever, Sofia said calmly. But it won't bring her back. It will only keep you from living. Daniel flinched slightly. He didn't like the word living. It sounded like something people said when they wanted to make grief manageable. But Sofia didn't say it like that. She said it like she was stating a fact. Daniel's voice dropped. Sometimes I think Lily deserves someone better than me, he admitted. The confession came out quietly, almost reluctant. Sofia's eyes narrowed. No, she said. Daniel looked up. Sofia leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. You don't get to say that, she said, voice firm but controlled. You don't get to diminish what you've done for her because you're tired. Daniel's chest tightened. I'm not diminishing it, he said. Yes, you are, she replied, because you don't know how to accept that you've carried something impossible and you're still standing. Daniel stared at her. His throat tightened so hard it hurt. He looked away quickly, blinking. Sofia sat back, her expression softening slightly. Not here to replace Emma, she said, and I'm not here to compete with her memory. Daniel nodded once, still not trusting his voice. Sofia continued. I'm here because I want you, she said, and because I want Lily to have more people who stay. Daniel finally looked at her again. You don't know what staying means, he said. Sofia's gaze held steady. Yes, I do. Her voice was quieter now. My father left when I was 9, she said. He didn't die. He just decided his life would be easier without us. Daniel's chest tightened. Sofia's expression remained calm, but her hands had curled slightly in her lap. My mother worked 2 jobs, she continued. My sister basically raised me. I learned early that love doesn't always come with loyalty. Daniel didn't speak. Sofia looked at him. So when I say I'm not going anywhere, she said, it's not because I'm naive. It's because I know what it costs when people do. Daniel swallowed. The room felt smaller. Not suffocating, just intimate. Sofia shifted closer, slowly. Daniel didn't move away. She reached out and took his hand. This time he didn't flinch. Her thumb brushed lightly over the rope burn scar that was still healing on his palm. Daniel stared at the contact. He felt his chest tighten again. Not with fear. With something like surrender. I don't know how to do this, he said again. Sofia nodded. Then we do it badly at first, she replied. We make mistakes. We adjust. We keep showing up. Daniel's mouth tightened. That sounds exhausting. Sofia's lips curved slightly. It is, she said. But it's real. Daniel sat in silence for a long time. He could hear the faint city noise through her window. Distant sirens. Cars. People living their lives without knowing anything about his. He thought about Lily's face pressed against the ice cream shop window. He thought about the way she'd said people leave, like it was weather. He thought about Emma's photo on his shelf, and he thought about Sofia's hand holding his like it was the simplest thing in the world. Daniel exhaled slowly. When HR asked if the relationship becomes official, he said, I wanted to laugh. Sofia watched him. Why? Because it already feels official, he admitted. Sofia's eyes softened. Yes, she said quietly. It does. Daniel's throat tightened again. He didn't kiss her yet. He just leaned forward slightly until his forehead rested against hers. He could feel her breath. He could smell her shampoo again, clean and faintly citrus. He stayed like that, eyes closed, as if he needed proof she was there. Sofia's hand slid up to the back of his neck, steadying him, and then Daniel kissed her. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't hungry. It was careful, like he was testing whether the world would punish him for wanting something. Sofia kissed him back, slow and certain. Daniel felt something in his chest unclench. Not fully, but enough. When they pulled apart, Sofia kept her forehead against his. You're shaking, she murmured. Daniel let out a quiet breath. I know. Sofia's fingers brushed his jaw. You're safe, she said. Daniel almost laughed at that. Safe was a word he didn't trust anymore. But in that moment, with her that close, he didn't argue. They sat together on the couch for a while after, shoulders touching. Daniel didn't know how long. Time moved strangely again, the way it had on the ocean. Eventually, Sofia stood. Stay, she said. Daniel hesitated. He thought of Lily, of his mother, of the careful structure of his life. Then he nodded. He stayed. The next morning, Daniel woke up in her bed. The light was pale through the curtains. Sofia was still asleep beside him, one hand resting near his chest like it had found its place there overnight. Daniel lay still, listening. Her breathing was slow, even. He watched her face for a long moment. There was no makeup, no sharp professionalism, just a woman asleep, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. Peace. It didn't last. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from his mother. Lily asked if Sofia is your girlfriend. I told her to ask you. Call me when you wake up. Daniel stared at the screen. His stomach tightened. Sofia stirred beside him, blinking awake. She saw his face. What is it? She asked softly. What is it? She asked softly. Daniel held up the phone. Sofia read it. Her expression shifted slightly, but she didn't look afraid. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. She asked, Sofia said. Daniel nodded once. She notices everything. Sofia looked down, quiet for a moment. Then she said, So what are you going to tell her? Daniel stared at the wall. He felt the familiar instinct to retreat, to slow it down, to keep it small. Lily's voice echoed in his head. Don't mess this up, Dad. He exhaled slowly. I'm going to tell her the truth, he said. Sofia watched him carefully. And what's the truth? She asked. Daniel turned his head toward her. His voice was calm, but it felt like stepping onto thin ice. The truth is, he said, I love you. The words sat there. Heavy, not dramatic, just real. Sofia didn't speak immediately. Her eyes filled slightly, but she didn't let anything spill over. She nodded once. Then she reached out and touched his cheek again, the same way she had the night before. I love you too, she said. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He blinked hard. He didn't cry, but he felt the pressure behind his eyes anyway. Later that day, Daniel picked Lily up from his mother's. Lily climbed into the car and immediately said, So is Sofia your girlfriend? Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. Yes, he said. Lily stared at him for a long second. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. Daniel blinked. That's it? He asked. Lily shrugged. She makes you less rainy, she said. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't trust himself to respond. At a stoplight, he reached back and squeezed Lily's hand. Her fingers squeezed back without hesitation. When they got home, Daniel stood in the doorway of the apartment with Lily's backpack in one hand. The place looked the same. The same couch, the same kitchen, the same framed photo of Emma on the shelf. But Daniel felt different standing there. He walked over to the photo and picked it up. Lily watched him quietly. Daniel stared at Emma's smile. It hurt. It always would, but it didn't feel like a wound that needed to stay open to prove he loved her. He set the photo back down. Then he turned to Lily. I'm still your dad, he said. Lily rolled her eyes. I know. And your mom. His voice tightened slightly. Your mom will always be your mom. Lily nodded, her face serious now. I know that too, she said. Daniel exhaled slowly. And Sofia, he said, she's not here to replace anyone. Lily studied him. Then she said, she can be extra. Daniel let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, he said, she can. Lily nodded like the matter was settled. Then she ran to her room yelling that she wanted pancakes tomorrow. Daniel stood alone in the living room. He looked around. He listened to the sound of Lily moving down the hall. He felt the familiar ache of grief. Still there. Still part of him. But it wasn't the only thing in him anymore. The storm in the middle of Lily's painting hadn't disappeared. It was still there. But now there were edges around it. Light around it. Daniel sat down on the couch and let his head fall back against a cushion. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like he'd conquered anything. He felt like a man who had been afraid for so long that fear had become his personality. And now, slowly, he was learning the difference between caution and hiding. Outside the window, the day moved on. Cars passed. People walked dogs. Someone laughed down the street. Daniel closed his eyes. He didn't know what the next year would bring. He didn't know what Sofia's new department would look like, or whether the company would ever fully let the rumors die. He didn't know if Lily would keep trusting this new shape of their life, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to make it small. Not anymore. Because love wasn't a reward. It was a responsibility. And Daniel had already learned what it cost to lose it. He wasn't going to waste what was still here.